Well, welcome. My name is Jeremy Vanderloop. This is our CRES Chat here. We're talking about how knowing when to pivot, persevere, and destroy on vision, ideas, companies, life, whole nine yards. And so I've got some notes here, and I got to really just kind of walk through this. Have you ever had opposition before? Have you ever had to overcome and recover from total annihilation and failure in life and business?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, me too. All right, so good topics that we have a little bit of experience, unfortunately, in this area, but I think that's also fortunate because it rains on everyone. I remember thinking of that this week. We were talking to, I was talking to Cole here, one of our members, and we were talking about how it's just cyclical, the seasons of life. This week I was reading in my journal. I have this journal that I document on. I've been doing it since I jumped into the real estate space from the music industry. And I flipped to 2019, which was I always have said I had a 2019 experience that we'll definitely talk about it in this chat. But I was reading through this and I was like, wow, there is like almost identical emotional similarities of the season I'm in now. And it just hit. It was like, man, when you want the rain is after you're done planting and you don't want it when you're trying to reap, right? But sometimes it hits when you're planting and when you're trying to reap, right? And you're just like, and so it's learning how to not react, but respond cognitively. And so that's what we're talking about today. And I have my dear friend Justin Price here. Justin is the principal founder, operator, and owner of Verse Marketing, which is a 7-figure marketing agency. So props to you for that. Like breaking the sevens is a hard thing to do for anybody, and it just keeps running after that. But man, let's just take like a few minutes. Let's learn about you. Like tell us about your life.
Oh man,
how you got into what you're doing, everything else.
Thanks so much. Stoked to be here. Appreciate you having me, Jeremy. It's been super fun as we've talked and gotten to know each other about what's happening at CRES, and super aligned as far as two creative people trying to figure out how we can help businesses grow, and it really starts with the leadership, And so I think a conversation like this is so important for seeing people move forward and figuring out how to do it in a healthy way. I think there's so much bad advice out there, and really bad. I'll try to do my best to not add to that today.
Yeah, me too. We don't give advice around here because then you take responsibility if it works or fails.
Right. But I just started getting my hands dirty when I was young as a creative. So, as a musician, as an artist, just getting into anything that I possibly could get into. And luckily I had a church community that gave me an outlet for that. And so kind of got sucked into that path as a creative director, went to art school, tried to figure out how to do creative work as a business and as a leader. And got great coaching and training as a leader, and helped organizations kind of grow as a creative director. And about 10 years ago, we started an agency that kind of birthed out of the experience of the prior 10 years of being a creative director. And that agency is going really well today. We've got about 16 full-time staff members. We're based out of Tampa, and we have a remote culture that works all over the country. And we run with about another like 16 or so contractors that are mostly full-time but flexible.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
That's the agency.
Yeah, and we definitely bonded pretty quickly. And it was our circles, they ran like this for so long and intertwined. And we just recently connected, and it was like, where have you been my whole life? How did this not happen before?
It's like 10 miles away from each other.
Yeah,
just running
like
parallel.
our entire lives, like having mutual friends, and so I'm excited to see what life brings, with everything you're doing, and like some of our previous chats, we talked about culture and scaling culture and how to develop that, and so much of this stuff is just about how to make right decisions when crisis hits you in the seasons of crisis. And while we do this is all inspired by honestly back, behind the scenes interactions I would have with my friends during lunch or coffee. And it was like, we should probably have flies on the walls. And so we're going to chat for an hour.
Yeah.
And no one is here. And it's just this powerful experience. And then all of a sudden, oh wow, someone's here. We'll have an active Q&A for 30 minutes, and then that's get fun because we have no clue what's coming, and you don't even know what's coming. So this is very raw, and
I'm gonna have to pivot.
You might have to pivot. Yeah. Oh man, I thought it was about this. It's not. So tell us your social security number. Just kidding. I just need the last one. Just the last one. Who said that? Who said that? I have no clue who that. No, so kind of jumping into the first talking point. So I want to kind of look at some real life scenarios I can learn from, and kind of add value to you as well. Where have you encountered in life and business that could have easily delivered like a fatal blow, or even delivered a fatal blow to you and your emotions, your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual, all these type things, right? And let's talk about, the whole point is to create some actionable movement of knowing, when should I pivot? When should I double down and persevere? Or when should I go, man, this was great. It was the right thing at the right season, but now it's the wrong thing, or I just messed up entirely and missed this, right? And you go, all right, so give me, let's walk through that.
Yeah. Well, I think, one of the things when especially in this environment where we're talking about business, we oftentimes think that there is like a business thing that drives our pivots and that we have to recover from. But I actually think that we're still just humans.
Yeah. I
think that if we can understand who we are as people first, the business and the money follows.
Yeah.
And so for me, that pivot thing for me was I married my high school sweetheart, and I was on a path as a creative director. I had a super successful career trajectory, and she had a disease that we managed very well, but it threw us off every once in a while here and there. But about 10 years ago, she just got hit in a way where we couldn't manage it anymore, and she had to go on bed rest. And she was I thought I was marrying her as she was going to be my sugar mama, because I was a creative guy who knows how successful I'll be. And she was going into leadership and management in a hospital system, phenomenal nurse. And so here we are 10 years into that journey, and she gets put on bed rest, and so we've got this vision of man, we're doing all of the right things. We're good people, and we're making all these right decisions. And then it just kind of all, hits a wall. And I can't do the thing anymore. So we lose her income.
The storm hits, right?
The storm hits. We lose
the
her
most
income.
inopportune time.
And we add just some more rain. It would be the medical bills.
Yeah.
And then we didn't think we were going to be able to have a baby because of it. And in the middle of that same year, we find out we're pregnant. So we have our first kid, and then we find out she has Down syndrome. And so we've got this special needs kid. I've got a bedridden wife, and I've got a job that requires me to work 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I'm picking up extra work at night. I'm working 80 hours a week now, just to try to make things work.
Yeah.
And I was that everything kind of hit. And I think at that point, I had a choice. It could have completely destroyed me.
So what did you do? Do you pivot, persevere, or you obviously couldn't in that scenario? And one thing that I talk about, especially on our one-on-one interviews for membership, is I always make sure people know that there's no difference in separation between your business life and your personal life. You have one life. It's the life of Justin.
That's right.
And there's no such thing as balance. You cannot balance it.
Yeah.
Life is basically a sequence of prioritized decisions that are determined by the influential positions of the cycle in life.
Yeah.
Period. It's how you respond or react to it. And if you haven't built in your response rate, your emotional reaction, you will kill something that needs to just be pivoted or doubled down on. Right. And so you didn't even know that was a thing that I say all the time. Right. That's how I know you're culturally right in line with us. But so double down on that. So now your life of Justin is blown up, and you have a business, and you have all these different things, and or you have a good paying job.
I had a great job, yeah. But when I looked at it, I was man, this is not going to work. Long term, this is not going to work. And so I felt, there wasn't any balance. But I look at things pretty seasonally, and I said, this season can't last. Yeah. And so I've got to both pivot and persevere.
Yeah.
And so
sometimes it's a yes.
Work had to pivot.
Yep.
And so that's how we started the agency. And I said, well, we can build this thing remotely, and I can do the work. I can actually serve nonprofits, do the work I've got more than a decade of experience like doing. And I've got a bunch of other people who also would love to do it with me. And I could hire them. That sounds like a pretty good idea. Like the typical founder's problem there. Just hire my friends and it'll be great.
Oh, no big deal.
Yeah.
We'll never have to pivot on that.
Yes.
I'll never have to fire someone I love. No, that'll never happen.
Exactly. So
May or may not have
that's
had to
how
do
we
that.
started. Oh, yeah, last week.
That wasn't that recent. But Daniel, just watch out, dude. Watch out. It's been like 4 or 5 times. I did fire my cousin once.
Oh, man.
And he gave me a hug and cried. And I was like, I still love you, but you're definitely fired.
Like, I'll see you at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm sorry. That's the conversation, right?
That's right. So we had to pivot the work scenario, and but I had to persevere as a husband for 10 more years through bed rest, and I had to be a single dad
With a special needs, beautiful human being,
amazing,
beautiful child. Yeah.
She's incredible. And I mean, and the thing that like hit me that could have destroyed me, right? So we had a doctor who was like, "You need to abort her," and we said like, "Hey, that life is not worth having the birth. That's way too dangerous for your wife, and it's not, who knows what kind of life she's going to even have, And so she has actually, so she's going to turn 10 next month, and she is actually outperforming any other Down syndrome student in Pinellas County.
Wow.
She's breaking like any kind of like expectations and records for testing and all that kind of stuff. And she's amazing. She doesn't come in contact with anybody who she doesn't make their day better.
And this is kind of obviously like a rabbit trail, but normal is relative and subjective.
True.
Right? Normal is completely relative and subjective. And a lot of times with that, because we've had a couple of our kids that, like the last one, there was a similar thing, Brittany and Jed, we have 4. That's how all this vision came about. Was we had this uncontrollable solution of a high probability. I mean, we had heard terms like 95% chance of fatality for the wife and the baby, and all these different things, and had a shorter stint of bed rest, but it was very chaotic and very traumatic. And that was the only thing we could control was the controllables. And then we got this phone call for this space that was going to be demolished. And what we could do is develop something to help people that may not have the support structure we have. And now we're sitting here chatting in a spot that's supposed to be torn down, right?
Yeah.
Of pivots and persevering of like, okay, how do I control the controllables, which is what you're doing. But the relative position of normal, right? That your daughter is beautiful and is and has a purpose, right?
Yeah.
Is admirable. Just like Jed, I couldn't imagine my life without Jed. And he'll be 3 in May, and you're like, I can't believe that. And so, and there's no shame on people that make the opposite decision that we made. But it's just at the same time, it's like having this cognitive thought and ability to not react, but respond intellectually to say, no, I'm going to pivot somewhere else to destroy another part of my life that I value in order to adjust for this new priority. Right. And I think that is the sequence of what we're talking about, is like not trying to find this balance of just saying, how do I actively identify what now has become the priority that's been forced upon me and not try to double down, and kind of jumping in between. What do you think the natural tendency is for most leaders and entrepreneurs to do?
Well,
in their business. Let's try that. Let's just,
I get to work with a lot of leaders now, and as an agency owner, I oftentimes have to kind of work with the key decision maker, and we do a lot of reverse engineering. We do creative things. We solve complex problems, but it's typically my job to reverse engineer how it's going to actually play out and go and try to help communicate that. And so we have a lot of these kind of conversations with leaders where we say, here's all of the numbers. Here's how this would play out. Here's a strategy that we think will work the best based on all of this market research and based on actual data that is live right now. Real costs for ads, real costs for things, real conversion metrics, and maybe even super conservative. And I'll look them in the eyes and I'll be like, do you believe in this vision or not? And so often I see leaders make the decision to just be scared. I think things are moving so fast. We've all, if we are running a business today, most likely we either started that out of COVID, which is scary and very uncertain, or we've held on for dear life through COVID. Unless you're in like the medical industry, which was then scary and then very, very like fruitful, and a few other industries, like you had a pretty big shakedown. And so I think today, talking to a lot of leaders, I see fear driving decisions, and rather than like, hey, I need to like act on this vision that I have, that I say I have, that I believe in. And then our staff, our teams see that we don't really believe it. Yeah. They're like, we're not actually living that mission out. We're not really going for that vision that you said is that you put on the conference room wall. Like, because if we were, we would be making these steps forward. But we're just hanging on for dear life. And I'm empathetic to it.
I'm so glad we're talking about this, because in order to really get into the conversation of pivoting, persevering, or destroying a vision, we have to talk about the emotional health and the mental health that you address as a leader, saying, am I going to be fear-based, or am I going to move with data and move with probability and faith? Yeah. Right? That if I do not move, I'm already adopting destruction. Period, right? Yeah. If I might just die slower. My company may die slower because I want to ignore the brutal facts and the data. But at the end of the day, if I don't create some type of response, reaction is just, you're not controlling anything. It's all fear. It's survival, right? It's scarcity versus thriving in abundance thinking. Yeah. And it's not if, it's when we get hit, and how frequently we get hit is pretty dang frequently as leaders. And it's like a daily response rate. And so you have to build into this mechanism. Okay, is this a thing that I persevere, double down on? Is this a thing that I completely pivot? And the definition of that pivot is I keep one leg down and I move directions, right? I do like and then a destruction goes, both feet are up, I'm out, right? I'm not even like, I'm running as fast as I can. Yeah. And that persevere is running directly, double downing towards it, right? So destruction's like, let's just kill this thing. It's over, right? So back on, that's why I do bullet points with my phone. So I'm not texting, my phone's on Do Not Disturb. But give me like an example. So you just talked about that. Let's fast forward. Yeah. You hit a really, really, really horrific season that it was destruction, and then you had to persevere and pivot, and so did many aspects of your life. Let's talk about that.
First of all, I think it's important to say that I believe that those like horrific situations are what make us really good. And I think that those are the experiences that give us the callus. That hard work gives us the callus to do the thing we are actually made to do, that allow us to do something great. And so I've always like kind of hung on to this like verse that is to consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because it's the perseverance that actually allows you to grow and to experience the fullness of what God created you to be. Yeah. And so I've kind of hung on to that through that time frame. And so like in that scenario, it was like, man, we ended up building an agency as a creative person with a vision. We built an agency for creatives that worked with the reality of life. Creative, people are one of the weirdest people to lead in the sense that like, it's not black and white. You have to actually output work from within you. And when the thing that is within you is struggling or is hurting, you suck. Yeah, your creative chops.
Impacts. It's one ecosystem, right?
It's an emotional, it's one emotional ecosystem. And so leading that, if that's your business, and if you work with people who have to output something like that, it's very different than like when I'm working with a manufacturer, and it's like their machine just has to work, and an operator has to do a standard operating procedure to follow through with that. And I can give a creative a standard operating procedure, but the output is still highly variable based on the health of that person's emotional state.
Well, and a lot of this stuff, both being creatives, and I remember I had a stint in my career as a recording artist, and I was writing, and I remember the first time I actually hit writer's block. I was a prolific writer, so I don't know, I've written hundreds of songs in my life, and maybe close to 1,000. I have no clue. A lot. I've written a lot of songs and have created a lot of things in life. And I remember when I just dried up out of nowhere, and I thought, uh-oh, I forgot how to write. I can't be creative anymore. And what it was I was afraid of writing something bad. Mm-hmm. I was afraid of failure, and I was afraid of appearing to be a failure to my peers. And it completely dried up my creativity. And I think so much of this that we talk about, and I just talked about this in our mastermind this week, it was talking about trying to find failure as fast as possible through feedback loops of try, fail, retool, build, measure, learn. Yeah. You know, like, and at the end of the day, what creates, in my opinion, a lack of response, and that then with some type of reaction, is I'm afraid to admit that I failed, right? And failure is a big killer of innovation, survival, and growth. And we even have like the position here, if you're on my team and I'm expecting you to try, I'll lead you 20%, 10% up front, 20% on the back end of me. This is John Maxwell, 80-20 rule of leadership. And then I'm going to expect you to do this thing 80% of the way that I would do it. And you have 20% that I am expecting and rejoicing for you to try something and fail. The thing that will cause brutal like upset in me is if you come to me and bottleneck the process because you're afraid of my disapproval. Like, no, that will get you off the team very quickly because now you just bog down our entire And so I remember like we created the most beautiful failure award to support this. I was like, guys, failure is wonderful because it's moving progressively forward, and you're trying things controlled. Obviously, it's because it's tied to that response, but it's like, how do we move and pivot or double down? And it's all data driven and trying to just overcome failure and trying to overcome the fear of failure. And Henry Ford, and I quote this all the time to my kids too. Like you literally like test this on my kids. You're like, you either win or you learn. The only way to fail is to quit. Mm-hmm. And I say that so much. It's probably in other CRES chats, but it's literally like the one of the key principles of overcoming hardship and this trying to figure out how to take and countersink this freight train that's coming straight at me, that's going to annihilate me and kill me, and learning how to use that speed and velocity and weight that's going to hit me and pivot it and use it for my propulsion, right, to move me forward. What do you think, though? Like, do you think the fear of failure is one of the key components that keeps people from responding and just reacting?
100%. Yeah. I think, we sometimes have failures that will scar us.
Yeah.
And the pain of those previous failures will stop us from making that failure that was maybe the right thing to do now because we failed in that same vein before.
Yeah.
And I think keeping an open mind, I think being a healthy relationship with failure is one of the things that a lot of leaders need to embrace. Most of the time I think there's lots of different types of leaders, but I know for me, it's just been a matter of going man, how much, am I willing to risk in this failure right now? And we actually say that there's an investment banker rule, which if you're making a loan law where you're expected as a loan officer to get loans that fail. And if you're not, then you probably were not taking enough risks. You were probably not making the bank as much money as you could. You were probably saying no to too many opportunities in loans. And so there's even an expectation, I know with our team, that hey, if you can look back at the last year and you didn't have a single thing that failed, then you were playing it way too safe. And I think that there's a good mentality of going setting the expectation of failing as part of the moving forward of you don't always get to have traction moving forward. Sometimes going forward is those fail points, and then that will leapfrog you forward.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Of course. And, I'm going to kind of give a shared experience and story. So I think what most people naturally do when they're really, really, really passionate about an idea that they're trying to make a reality and turn into a business and a company and something that generates profit with effort, because the difference between a great idea and a great profitable idea is hard work, putting forth effort and discipline. And I will kind of kind of pause for a second, like I say this a lot now, is I'll give you the secret to success right now. Like you don't need to hear any or read any other book after that say this. Here's how you become ultra successful. It's rigorous routine, disciplined mindset, disciplined action, being a disciplined person and surround yourself with other disciplined people. It's over. As soon as you can live disciplined, you'll be wildly successful, right? And that's it. That's the makings of this. But so much of this, we get so blinded by our passions and our optimism as entrepreneurs and as leaders that we don't know when to kill the vision. We don't know when to kill the business. And we go down with the sinking ship.
Yeah.
Right? And it's all about mindset too. When things, so I this is a shared experience. So where I just, it would have destroyed me if I would have stayed on, but I had to make this decision. I just finished reading this part of my journal, a 2019 experience, and I had lost because I was trying things, and I tried standing up and growing and running too fast. I over-leveraged, I overexposed myself, and almost brought destruction to my family through bankruptcy and lawsuits and a bunch of crazy things because I didn't realize what I was doing, and I was young and naive in the game. And I remember I had some reserves, and we were in between my first couple development deals, building new homes and developing my first rezoning. And I had like this reserve, and this flip came to me. It was a real estate transaction. It was kind of out of my market, but close enough that I underwrote it, and the spread was really good. And after looking at it, it looked like it was like a 6-week flip and maybe like $50K. And so I said, all right, let's go. And so I said, I got time. I got 6 to 8 weeks in between, just a waiting period. I might as well stay active. And so we're going on this thing, and everything's going really good. We're a week and a half from like being done, 2 weeks from being done. And the wheels just they blow up. It was early on. I did it without permits, and I got caught. And because it was supposed to be, in all honesty, it was supposed to be a facelift.
Yeah.
Right? That's all it was. And then as we facelifted it, it ended up having major structural issues. And so it was like one of those things, like we didn't know how to pause and pivot. We just persevered on this timeline vision. I was like, okay. And when it shifted from being a facelift to having to have the whole thing rewired, and then having to build a whole new staircase, and then having to, open up walls, and you're like, oh no, this is a full new construction house now.
Right.
And all these crazy things started happening in this deal that I will not talk about some of the details of it. But yeah, do not put, no. But we got popped. we got red flagged. And it was the greatest blessing, now that I know, because like we ended up having now go through permitting, and they threw the book at us. They just threw the book at us. It was at the county over in Pinellas County, and they just like threw the book at us. And man, I had to replumb the thing twice. I had to run electrical twice because there was like no after the fact stuff. We had to replace windows. We had to rip out a staircase because it was permitted, but they failed an inspection and finished it anyways. Oh. And 20 years earlier, and that came up, and so we had to rip out everything on this entire second floor and rebuild it. And it was like, it went from 6 weeks to 14 months and tripled in value. And I remember I was reading my journal this week about this experience, and I had like 6 months between entries. One was very optimistic, doubling down. We're in this thing for X, we're going to try to get this, and to the point where it was like, oh, I have to do something. I don't know what I'm going to do. Our best case scenario is we lose money, but hopefully not go bankrupt, right? And to the point where like it was this whole journey that I was watching this guy in 2019 go through the most valuable deal of his life, because it's what taught me and what made me who I am today, of the no's in my life, of the discipline. But I didn't know how to pivot until it was far too late, and I doubled down, and it cost me dearly. And I remember sitting there, and this was this week. It's funny that I was reading this story this week that happened to me, and I remember sitting there, and it closed that October, and we lost like $70,000, like hard loss. Like we started with it, and we sold it, and we didn't have it. And I remember doing it with a buddy of mine. Plus 14 months of my opportunity costs, right? And it was at that season, every deal exploded. Our new builds, I was writing stories about what was going on in our new constructions with guys defecating on our homes and just horrible experiences and having a bad team member that literally, like a design guy that literally took 9 months to design homes. It took longer for him to design it because something happened in his life than it did for us to build it. And it was like, that was going on. I tried a new development deal. I lost money on that because I bowed out, and it was like all these crazy things that were happening. And in 2019, it was like I lost $1 million in profits and $100,000 of someone else's money.
Yeah.
And it was like these stories, though, was where I learned, like, okay, I doubled down, and then I finally learned this principle that don't let one bad deal or bad decision dictate the next 10 decisions trying to correct it. Learn how to destroy it and say, I'm going to get through this, but I'm not going to continually make bad decisions to try to save face, to try to save this deal. And I remember once I did that, my cognitive ability went through the roof, and I was like, I am simply losing money, but I got to get my time back, right? I got to get through this thing to the best of my ability. And, all that cool stuff happened, and we ended up getting out of that season, like, by the skin of our teeth. And then I had this other thing where a county that we were working in, they messed up on one of the deals and had us go through this whole 9-month process and, tens of thousands of dollars in platting and all these things for them to no longer. Have you ever had somebody in the county basically go like ghost and they won't communicate you other than phone calls? That's a bad sign when they do that, because they're like, let's gear up to not get sued because we guaranteed this in writing. So I had all that going on, and this is where, cost, like that was going on too, and just all in the same season, same year, all this stuff happening. Talk about being a young developer and a young real estate guy who learned. But I ended up persevering in my faith to learn from the experience. I didn't let this, because it was ultimate destruction. Complete ultimate. I worked 1.5 years of my life, made nothing, no money for 1.5 years. And it was ultimate destruction economically. And I just had to cognitively respond and persevere in my mindset to be a lifelong learner, and then pivoted my criteria of my buys and my acquisitions. And then I was praying, and I have a very active faith, and I was there, and could I double down and take on this municipality and prove that I'm right? And I just felt this thing, sell everything. So we listed this property I'd been developing. In 7 days, it sold. So we got made whole. Like cash in the bank. Made whole in 7 days with a little profit, but it was still a negative loss annually. But it kept us alive. And 2 weeks later, COVID hit. And the world shut down and collapsed. And all of a sudden now, because I didn't get locked up trying to prove that I was right, even when I was right in one scenario, and when I did get hit on another, I just responded and said, I'm not going to let one bad thing dictate my next 10 decisions. And then I was chilling in Nevada for like 1.5 months while the world shut down. I was not worried. I could fully respond. And it was like one of the greatest blessings, because 2020 was like cake as well, because I was like, oh, cool. Because now I can rebuild. So the end of the blessing ended up being, everyone was shut down. I was already at ground zero because of the previous year, but everyone else was there with me, and that was the positive solution. I was like, now I can rebuild on the way up because everyone else is rebuilding, and it was phenomenal, and it was just worked out really good for me. But that's a shared experience of just like a real life scenario that shook and shaped so much. And there's so many of those experiences that happen daily and annually and monthly. What do you have? Do you have an example?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, going back to that family scenario, I stood by my wife and I said, I'm just going to be a faithful husband. And we figured out how to build a business that allowed me as a creative to be successfully working while handling this insanely taxing emotional situation. And figure out how to we stayed in our community, like where we had family. We had great support and structure around us to help Chloe be super successful. And we found a great school. And the things started to just kind of come together through the discipline of staying focused on that thing that I committed to persevering through. And the business didn't explode. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't great. There was a lot of years where I made less money. But we paid the bills. We always paid for the medical bills, and I had the ability to take off and go to these doctors all over the country. We were able to afford those things because of it. And what I didn't realize why all of that was happening while I was just grinding that through was, man, I was building a culture and a team that actually served me, but it turns out was actually super valuable to the rest of the creatives, because I needed it to function like that, where I as a creative person could still survive and still be productive while I have this emotional thing happening in my life. And the rest of the team is no different. Like the rest of these people that are super talented, are phenomenal people, like they're going to have stuff. And so we built a culture that allowed that to happen. And you know, just about a year and a half ago, my wife passed away. And I thought, man, that was going to be the end. I thought that would be the thing that would destroy me, because I held on. I mean, I fought hard. My wife passing. I thought, me being alone, a single dad, like I worked really hard on that relationship for 20 years. Like that was my biggest investment of all of my time. There was nothing worse that I could imagine happening. I prayed and I fought for that thing. I persevered for that. There was no glimpse in my mind that
there was no pivot on that, no destruction on that. Yeah,
never.
Yeah.
And she degraded really bad, and to the end there, it was really, really difficult. I mean, some very, very traumatic, multiple long seasons in the hospital, lots and lots of like close calls, and the incredible thing that came out of that on the other side was just seeing the community and seeing the culture that I had built through all of that. Ended up being amazing on the other side. And all of the things that I feared would happen if that relationship was ever to go away, that I would be really lonely, that I would, people would look at me as like a 40-year-old single dad. I must be like a terrible guy, you know. All these like things stories I had built in my head that would be terrible were actually the opposite. So it turns out women actually really like guys who stick with their wives through hardships and lose them. That's a pretty like notable. That's like a pretty good thing. And I ended up finding an amazing woman very quickly. It turned out that the community that I had served for that last 10 years rallied around me. I didn't feel a single day of loneliness. And then I looked around at the agency and I was like, I have like 25 hours of time that I used to spend caretaking. I have this emotional strain released from me for the first time in a long time. I didn't even realize how bad it had been, you know, because it just slowly keeps building. And so I was like, I have like a completely new lease on life. And what I thought would be the very darkest days were the absolute brightest. And so I think coming out of that going like, man, I cannot waste that last 10 years. Not for the agency, not for my daughter, not for myself. And so I said, you know, I'm going to have to do the things that are uncomfortable now that I was hiding behind that stuff as an excuse not to do. Things like talking on a stage, recording my thoughts, putting those down into a book, being a thought leader in the space, challenging other creative leaders to stop leading the way we maybe used to and start to think about how we can be better, how we can lead organizations better, and challenging myself to be a better leader. And so coming out of that like a year and a half later, I got remarried about 6 weeks ago, and to an amazing woman, and what I thought was like a potentially never going to be able to have, you know, a legacy to leave, and I didn't know how long I'd even have, you know, my daughter, to like a new hope of like kids. I've got a great partner who is incredible, and a whole new chapter that's like just starting. And so, yeah, I think, you know, for me, that's kind of how getting through that and focusing and staying disciplined for long enough.
Yeah. Persevering where it matters.
Yeah.
Right.
And now it gets to be a lot more fun.
Well, in so many people, and that's why I always talk about it's about priorities, not balance. So many leaders would have chosen to hide behind the cheapest and least valuable aspect of their life, which would have been their business and increasing their revenue. Stories they're countless of men going through this with their children or with their wives, and they're avoiding it, and they're going on the golf course and drinking with their buddies more because they don't know how to handle it, or they bury themselves at their desk, and they they double their businesses or triple their businesses.
Yeah.
And in that, they reject and abandon that's most valuable to them. And they don't have that foresight to say, this season will end, and I'll be left with whatever I planted during this season of hardship. And with that said, there's mechanisms and rhythms that you can unlock. There's algorithms within the universe, within principle, that you can understand how to appropriately persevere, pivot, or destroy an idea. And it comes on this premise: the cheapest time a conflict ever is the exact moment it is found and discovered. And at that point, the speed in which we respond to it, not react, but respond to it, whoever can learn to respond faster to conflict will ultimately, through compounding effect, 1 movement daily, 1% daily, will outgain those who didn't. And it could be like literally by like, oh, I only analyze once a week, or only analyze once a month, or I only have I only analyze quarterly off of this. And it's like, we believe in this so much that we literally have daily metrics, daily KPIs, right? And daily huddles and hold accountable of daily metrics of constraint, emotional health for the team, and we grew so fast and so rapidly, even with this new startup, at 110% growth last year organically, net positive, incredible, with no marketing, because I didn't know you yet, right? No marketing, and just by the power of creating something valuable that people literally just enjoyed, and they would tell their friends about it. And the craziest thing is, my friend Steven taught me this: every 20% growth someone experiences in life and business, the systems and tools they use to get there will no longer sustain them or grow them to the next 20%.
Wow. And
so we kept hitting this thing, and because I had our metrics of measurement, that we would like crush our goals and our OKRs of objectives and key results in 6 weeks. And it happened all year last year. 6 weeks we would just gain and then like the other 6 weeks of the quarter, we were like, because we didn't plan for the pivot. Because pivots can happen when things are going really well too. Yeah. You did too good than you anticipated, right? A lot of people think this is only when you're doing bad.
Right.
It's when you're doing almost too good. You're like, okay, how do this slowed me down. Maybe I had 110% net positive growth with attrition. I probably could have had like a 200%. And so what we ended up doing, even this year we started, I was measuring and analyzing, and it was just like you're pivoting for solutions to help people more. But I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut my quarters into halves. I'm going to do Q1.1 and Q1.2, because I've figured this out, that we have now 20% growth, 27% growth a quarter. You're like, dude, that halfway in that quarter, like the infrastructure now breaks.
Yeah.
And so we did it this quarter, and it was like, you haven't taken the foot off the gas. We crushed it.
Love that.
And it was like building, like the whole point of these chats is not just to stay principle based, but method based, right? And so for me, that's a thing that we do. We have a whole meeting system and structure that I analyze 10 years out in advance every year. And I take the entire encompassment of my life. And my business and finances are always at the bottom, and all these other things, because I want to dictate the roadmap and where I'm going. And then so we do annual, we do it 10, 5-year, 2-year, 1 year. And then within our year metrics, we have annual, half annual, so H1, H2, quarterly. Now half quarters, monthly, weekly, and daily meetings, metrics, and KPIs for measuring. And the whole purpose of that is to analyze how we can try, fail, and retool, build, measure, learn, and spin those cycles and feedback loops faster. And we have found that, like, because we're measuring on the daily, well, maybe somebody else is measuring on the weekly. Well, it now took them 6 weeks to come to the same conclusion that took us 6 days, which is fascinating, simply because we're paying attention to it. Do you have anything in your life and business that's similar or that works that I could learn from?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we used to do annual plans, like really detailed annual plans as part of our strategies.
Yeah.
Pre-2020. I think post-2020, nobody's saying we can predict a year from now.
Super detailed.
We got to have vision, but like we can't really predict all of the variables very well because things are moving. In our space, we use a lot of digital. So we have a space that right now is being implemented where tools are being released almost every couple weeks. They're saying this is $1 trillion opportunity because it's not a single vertical that can actually utilize the technology that's being used right now. So whether the systems or the integrations of AI right now across almost everything.
Yeah, we're big on that. Yeah.
I know you guys are huge on that, but like our clients and the work we do is being changed almost daily. Like, but in real life, like at least monthly, it's affecting the work we bill for, the work we do, and really being willing to pivot on the big things in your life and your core priorities makes this kind of stuff a little bit easier.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but you can start to see practically
more digestible, more palatable.
How much you have to be a little bit looser with it, and everything has to be pointing back to value. So we've got to have super clear goals. I love how you were saying like your 10 all the way down to your monthly or daily goal.
Yeah, top 3. So we have top 3 priorities, and then we have leading KPI, because leading KPI is something I can influence and predict.
Yeah.
Right. It's the lag. Everyone measures laggers, and you're just like, well, you can't do anything to actually like fix a lagging KPI.
Late,
it's too late. You're measuring the thing that you already did.
Exactly.
And then so we're just like going from the hip, you know.
So yeah, we do the same thing. We've got leading and lagging KPIs that we're working on in any project, and we're not a daily point because we're pretty loose across a lot of different account types of work. The staff that we have though, but we are weekly doing those check-ins, those one-on-ones, and we're reporting and recording. Everybody on our staff has to know, am I actually doing a good job at what I'm supposed to do every single week? And they should be hearing from their peers and their direct reports, you are doing a good job.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of just keeping a healthy culture that a lot of organizations don't do. And so having that measurable system in place in which you can actually check in and do that is huge.
I'm glad you brought that up. So what we have, we call ours daily huddles, and then we also have individual. So we schedule meetings with ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. You're like, that's a lot of meetings. No, it's like it's energy and time management, mind management.
Yeah.
Some of them are meetings with ourselves, and we have daily pop reviews. 5-minute pop reviews, and that stands for it's inspired by Dan Sullivan's Gap in the Gain, but it's inspired and John Maxwell and these guys, and then it became this like catchphrase for a lot of people that didn't know where it came from, the progress over perfection. And so it comes on this principle that you cognitively cannot have a positive thought and a negative thought at the exact same time. And so if you can, so much of this is controlling the gratitude moments of your life, because your brain will naturally want to go to the negative, and then it sticks there, and then you start creating reactionary movements to the negative because you got to now fix this, versus saying, okay, this is a really crappy situation, but how can I see if I grew 1%, 2%? And that's I'm gonna rest in the gain that I've generated, and I'm gonna celebrate that progress, and then we're just gonna build out our plan for the next day, stay prepared, and come to that meeting. And we fail at this all the time. Our huddle yesterday was perfect. Our huddle today was not good. And it was just like, and my brain got stuck, and I had to be a good leader. I was like, Daniel, I disagree with your decisions this morning as priorities, but I'm going to let you do them anyways. And, we kind of negotiated. I was like, yeah, I wouldn't do that. And it's okay. Like, you're okay with like challenging. Like, I don't think that's a smart idea and use of your time.
Right.
I think you're copping out. I don't think that's productive. And just like having these things, and it's just like learning to be, you know what, you need to do this. This is a priority. You know what, all right. If you fail, though, we are going to talk about it, right? Yeah. And it's like, you don't just like ignore the failures, but we also have what's called WGBs every week. And it's really a simple system in our meeting. It's 1 hour, and they're all timed. And we start with the wins, because the first thing we want to do is get to the projects and the actions. So the first 30 minutes is, where did we win this week?
Yeah.
And then we don't even focus on what's broken. We say, okay, how can we grow and do that better? And so, okay, now what's broken? What was like a broken thing that happened? And then we have these things called 1%. So we're like, our goal is just to fix a 1% operating thing every single day. And you set those metrics and rules. And so much of like learning how to pivot, persevere, and destroy is setting clear guidelines of like, what are the rules of the game?
Right.
What's the rules of engagement? And so many leaders are just shooting from the hip. And then the first thing that you do when you shoot from the hip is you throw more money and more people at it.
Right.
And less strategy. And because you're making things tied to your gut, and you say, I've always done this. It's like you have to learn to, in order, the first rule to actually deciding if something's going to be like destroyed because you decide. There's a difference between deciding to kill something and destroy an idea, and having it just kill itself and then potentially kill you in the midst of it. right? And so much of this stuff is taking data-driven decisions. And that, if you don't collect data, in my opinion, you cannot even operate a proper pivot, a proper perseverance or destruction of a vision, a company, or an idea.
And I would say most organizations, once you get out of being a small team that meets in a small office, your leaders lose the accuracy of their data.
100%.
I remember a time where we were 7 or 8 employees. We were $1 million annual revenue. And I could tell you like what checks came in from what clients and what checks weren't coming in, but I knew those clients were good for it. Yeah. And I could tell you what our operating balance was at any given time. And I could tell you where we were going to be as far as all the costs, because I'm the one who approved all the contractors that were outside of our normal, overhead. I knew what all of our bills were. I knew when they went out. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but like it's not that hard to know those few sets. But you double that. And you don't know. I don't know. I have a bookkeeper now, and I have to see really good data. And in fact, the bookkeeper, this was another big learning thing for me, was like thinking that if you hire somebody who understands how to keep books, that they'll also know how to give you good reports. They don't. So I had to work with the bookkeeper to say, this is how the report will inform me well. This is how to get good data. And being pushed by other CEOs as the CMO or as the marketing agency for their companies, say, give me good data, has given me the ability to see, hey, I need that from all of my teams now to make good decisions. Mm-hmm. But we used to, like, once you get bigger out of that office where you kind of know everything that's going on, you're really going to live and die off of that good data. And one of the things that I always think about trying to keep a healthy culture, and this is kind of coming back to some of the things that have slowed me down from just being I'm just going to plow through everything kind of a guy, is just thinking about the fact that like when I don't stop to check good data, and when I don't stop to think like, should this be following a system, and I shoot from the hip like you were talking about, which is what I naturally want to do as a good leader. Do that, yeah. As I got vision. Like, I know what needs to happen here. Yeah. Or I think I do.
You can't scale though after that. You cap at $1 million or $2 million.
You can't scale because, and maybe this is just my heart for the teams that I've built, but I don't want to lose people. And it's inefficient. Training people is inefficient.
Absolutely.
Finding good people
is
expensive.
You don't even hire them until after they've been hired for 90 days, truthfully.
Right.
Like it's just like
paying the recruiter the 30% fee, like to get that good person, moving them if I'm going to move them, getting them equipment, getting them up, like I'm just as an efficiency guy, I'm like, man, I don't want to lose good people.
Yeah.
And so I think when I shoot from the hip, like my biggest pain point is thinking about the potential to lose people and the fact that like when I act that way, when I break the system that we put in place, that we all set a contract, right? That we're going to operate this way.
Yeah.
And you're going to get fired if you don't, but I'm okay because I'm the leader.
It's hypocritical. It doesn't work.
It's super hypocritical. And it will just continue to crack the system.
It will never work.
And so I go, man, that's
comes from the top down.
That's the pain point I kind of like lean into.
And you know, if you're having to pivot, and I had in the last 4 years, I've hired everyone and I've let everyone but one go. And it's an interesting season when you're making these pivots when it comes to human capital. And I would say as a good leader, this is a pretty big nugget for leaders to take advantage of. If anyone is ever shocked that they're being laid off or fired, you 1,000% failed as a leader.
Absolutely.
Period.
Yeah.
They should someone should never be shocked if they get let go and lose their job. It should not be a quick thing. And if it is, shame on you as a leader, because you're not a good leader. You're a demander, and you're after your own self-interest. I
had a kid that he worked with me for 5 years, even before we started the agency, and I brought him in. And a kid, he was a good chunk younger than me, but he was an intern. I love this kid. Like he was crazy talented, and I had to fire him. I think this was like 6 years ago, and I still remember today that he responded with, "I didn't know this was coming." And I was like, "You were on probation, dude. Like, we said like things have to change. Like you're on probation." But he's like, "I knew I was on probation, but like I didn't know you would fire me."
And to that,
I didn't clarify that.
Boom. Clarification is everything. Clearly articulating, and this is what I even teach my kids and other leaders. I said, guys, here's how we in a healthy way correct. We use the exhortation sandwich. We find the beauty and the positive in the individual.
Yeah.
We exhort them first and what we love about them and the reason why they got fired or hired in the first place. And this happens 2 or 3 times. And you set deadlines and say, we're going to have a follow-up in 2 weeks. And you make good on it no matter what's going on, or don't make the commitment.
Yeah.
So they know. And then you never bring a problem without a solution in tow. My kids hear that all the time. You're complaining about your teacher.
Yep.
You better not bring it to me without the solution of how you're going to help that person, that leader help you. And it goes all the way up too, right? So you do the exhortation, then you have the reprove and the rebuke. Here's what's wrong. But in the same breath, here is how I think that I can support you and I'll help you with this. Here's, I think, a solution. Can you please try this? It's okay if it doesn't work.
They usually
and then you
actually
exhort
know
them
the
again.
solution better than you
They
do.
do know the solution
So
better.
I'll
than
even
them.
offer it up to them
Yeah.
first to say, hey, this is the problem. How can you solve
That's
this?
a great thing. So you're asking the question, and that's before you're bringing the problem with the solution. It does start with the thing for bringing that up. You do say, hey, I'm seeing this result.
Yep.
Can you tell me what's going on? But that's where it comes up in the daily huddles, right?
Yeah.
The constraints, all these other things. That's why those huddles matter.
Yep.
And they're not reporting, they're not doing this. So after they've been telling you with data points and they've been bringing this stuff in, now you're at this point of like, hey, you are potentially losing your job. I'm going to pre-warn you. A lot of leaders and employers won't do this because they're afraid that if I give them a little bit, they're going to quiet quit and they're going to jump ship.
Right.
Right. And you go, well, that's a true thing, but thank God they did that anyways because
Right.
they fired themselves. It was awesome.
Right.
You know? And so you kind of walk through the positive solution, but it was like, I did this every single time. I even did this. So I've laid off everybody. I've had to fire one person. And the person that was fired, we're still a very good friendship, very good relationship. But it was one of those things too that culturally, like he didn't believe me. He literally didn't believe me. And I said, if you do this one more time, as soon as you walk through the door, you will lose your job. Okay. Wow. And it was like 3 times in a row. Like over like a 6-8 week period. I said, look, I promise you, this is your last warning. We've gone through this. You've brought solutions. I'm holding you accountable to the solutions you've created to me. You're not doing it. There's no friends in business. There's only friendly business. And I still love you, but our relationship will change if you can't overcome this.
Yeah.
Right. And he did it one more time, walked through the door and around everybody else. Cause it was everyone. And cause we have these conversations as a team too, because we're not going to tear somebody down. We're lift. That's the culture we have. We lift each other up. We swarm each other. And so as a good leader, I could not jeopardize the culture of my other team members if I didn't make good on and it was a family member, right, who thought he had family immunity.
Right.
Right. And he walked through the door. And I said, love you, buddy. Go home. What? You could have just called me and said you were going to do this. I would have fired you over the phone. You just wasted all your time coming in. I warned you. And it was like everyone, oh man, like, because a lot of them were like new team members. They're like, dude, Jeremy was serious. Like, he is a man of his word. He supports us. He loves us. But man, I don't want to let him down because he's going to hold me accountable to it. And it was that culture. And everyone else I laid off, I gave them 6 to 8 weeks notice ahead of time. Most of them all determined on their own that they were going to pivot anyways because we were doing so good at these natural positions of I don't own you, we're a team, and seasons only run. There's a start and an end.
Right.
But you know the data, and now you know that we have pivoted directions and that your role no longer fits in the seat.
Right.
In my opinion, that's good leadership when the people go, hey, I'm going to go, let's plan an exit. Yeah. Right. And that was kind of what we went through, but it was like, what I loved about proper pivoting, proper planning, proper destruction of killing relationships when it's time's up, that's exiting employment. Every single one of my people are now their friends, their peers, and we do business together. Every single one of them, we help them all start companies, right? And to the last minute of their employment with me as their leader, they worked as if they were coming in for the next year. And they worked after the time was done, and they powered through and worked an overtime that we were getting paid for because they were so tied to the results that we were generating as a team.
Right.
Even they knew that C was a season. And to me, that is the beautiful effect of healthy leadership and healthy data points of like, how do I know when the season's done to pivot, persevere, or destroy with relationships, with ideas and visions, with entire companies. Killing a business that you've ran for 20 years because it's no longer relevant is a hard decision to do, right? It's very emotional, but you can't get emotional about business.
Yeah.
You have to get empathetic and emotional about people and love people, but you manage systems and lead people. What do you think, though?
Yeah, I mean, we're unfortunately, like, we're now in that space where technology is forcing us to
It's
pivot.
hard. Yeah.
I went to art school for 4 years. Like,
Now AI can just do what you
yeah, I mean, seriously, like, the best logo I ever made can be done and generated in 10 minutes.
Not even that. Like faster than that.
Way better than anything that I've ever made myself.
It's awesome, though, right? When you think about it.
So now I'm just a curator. I'm not a creator anymore. I'm like, hey, that's the right logo for this organization.
Now it's the intellectual power.
But I
can't
the
human in the middle.
That's not worth very much. So we have to pivot to something a way more complex problem. Creating a logo was a valuable problem to people 20 years ago.
2 years ago. 6 months ago. Like, let's get real. 3 months ago.
It's been eroding.
It still is to some people.
It's
I mean,
been
what, like 4 months ago was Cole, right? Creating a logo. Now he's like, dang it, 4 months too late.
Yeah. But what's cool is, like, and that's the case, like, I mean, running Facebook was valuable organically 5 years ago, was getting a lot of success from that. Mm-hmm. You could do organic things. You could actually hack the system a bit. You could be smart enough to run a social media account that would produce results and sales. Today, I don't care how big your account is. We run accounts with millions of followers and users on social media. And if you don't pay, you don't actually get anything.
You don't play.
Right. That's just the game. You could do things with SEO that broke through. Right now, good luck. If you're ranking even on the second page, you might as well be no one. You might as well be out in the desert.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no one's seeing this. And so from a full search strategy, those things are changing all the time. And AI is going to change that drastically.
100%.
How AI is going to change that, though, I don't know. So I have to have a task force that doesn't make me money, focusing on that, trying new tools, reviewing, testing those results, implementing them for free for clients, testing out new ways to make that thing work. And then when we find that it works, it might only work for a year.
Investing. It's like cognitively. I'm 100%. Investing rather than you're testing.
Yeah.
I'm investing this because it's going to create XYZ.
So the only thing that matters in all of this space, though, is, like, if you actually have a true north of the results you're trying to get. So, if you are a problem solver in any formal way, that's the way we kind of define creative work, is just, hey, this is a thing that needs to be accomplished, and you have to find a way to get to it.
Well, that's why every goal we do is tied to a number, tied to a result.
Tied to a result.
It has to be. If not, then you can just deceive yourself through these vanity metrics and vanity goals that aren't really creating momentum. And a lot of times we'll hide behind that. We'll measure the wrong thing just to make us feel good.
Absolutely.
And again, it's that destruction plowing down on us. That is the result.
And we don't realize that, by the way.
We don't.
Just to be fair.
So we talk about it.
No one thinks about that.
None of us do. Yeah. Until you have, because again, you have to have your board of advisors over your life. Yeah. Like I would call you when I'm being emotional about something, because I can't think emotionally and logically at the same time as well. Just like I can't think grateful and negative at the same time, I can't think emotionally and logical at the same time. So if I'm in a position of emotional, just like uproar, I talked to my daughter and my kids, your emotions are awesome. Was it bad that you got angry? And they would always say yes. I said, no, I'm so glad you got angry. That was an emotion God created in you. Mm-hmm. But how you used it was bad.
Yeah.
Right? And you go, right? So your emotions are healthy. You have to create your systems that go, okay, I'm reacting emotionally. It's good. It's an outlet for me, because if I don't let it out, it will create a cancer inside of me, quite literally. Yeah. Right? This anxiety, this stress, all these things. So I need to find an outlet of someone who's not emotionally tied to this decision, and then go, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then I have to trust that controllable, that Justin is not tied to this. He's a friend. He's a peer. And his logic is probably better than my emotion right now, because this has to be a logical decision, and some have to be emotional decisions as well. So you have any closing thoughts? Well, just us talking, like, you know.
I'm stoked to do some Q&A.
Yeah.
And talk about. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. This was awesome, man.
We did. We kind of ADD'd
I love meeting with you every time we get together.
It was a good chat.
I've got 30 things to go implement on now.
So. Right? Yeah, me too. Me too.
Spurring up.
So people just walked in the room.
Yeah.
Right? Hey guys, we're gonna do an active Q&A. There's gonna be a microphone coming through. Are you guys enjoying the chat? Yeah. How many is your first chat in person? Dude, the entire room other than one of our faithful. Yes. So phenomenal, guys. So what we're going to do next, have you guys enjoyed this? You guys taking notes? The power of you can have this conversation with other peers and learn from each other as well. None of this was scripted. He didn't even know the questions or the topics. This is organic relationship. The power of connection, the power of knowing each other. And so now you get to partake in this chat with us. Daniel's got a microphone. Anybody have any questions? We're going to do this for probably 20 minutes. And we're just going to kind of dialogue back and forth. All right, Mr. John.
Tell us about your daughter today.
Okay, here's a mic. This is for this recording.
Oh, my fault. Tell us about your daughter today.
Okay.
How's she doing?
I think she's thriving. I think she's going to go into 5th grade next year. She's doing a really really good job. She's got a great support system around her. We've worked really hard to try to figure out how to keep that consistent. I think she is in the transition of like understanding what a new mom is, and I think as a dad, like that's consuming my mind a little bit as far as like how do I navigate all of that really well. But my wife is doing an amazing job. I mean, I can't fault her for a single minute on how she's handled that whole transition and how she even handled the dating process, which is why we ended up getting married. So.
Special kind of woman for sure.
Absolutely.
She's a sweetheart. Your wife's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Questions? Jansen was first, and then we'll just hit Francisco, and then because it's more efficient.
So you said you, in the heat of all of the adversity that was going on with your wife and then daughter, that's when you started your business?
Yes, sir.
Can you give us an example of what like a day looked like while that was going on? Because I can't fathom that.
Okay, this is fun. This is super fun. Yeah. So imagine. So I've got my daughter. So let's just say like a couple of years in. I've got some people coming over to the house, so we're using the house because this is still
It's like an office?
startup. Oh yeah.
Oh man, that's
So
awesome.
we're using the house. So the garage has our video production equipment. So our video guy is coming over. I would get up and I would take care of my daughter in the mornings, and I would like 6:30. Whenever she woke up, that's when I had to get up. Whenever it was problematic, so I'd get up, I'd take care of her, get her set. I'd let my wife like rest, and when she would wake up was her like typically her best. It could be 10 minutes of the day or it could be an hour before like her body started to just kind of fail on her. So we would try to have some sort of like touch point as a family, and then we would try to get on to work or school or whatever. So we got Chloe into like a special needs preschool at 3, and so I would usually take her, and that gave us like a little bit of grounding time. I'd come back, and Megan was usually okay during the day. And so, like for me to leave for 10 minutes or even a half hour, she'd be fine. I'd come back and I'd start working and make some breakfast for her if she needed something like that, or I might make her coffee, and then and check on her, make sure she had all of her morning medications and things like that. And then I'd get to work from the kitchen table or whatever. The video guy might come over and pick up gear from the garage or take the car to go do a shoot, or I might have to do a shoot in which then I'd have to have somebody else come over to make sure there was always somebody with Megan if I was going to be gone for a long period of time. And then if I didn't have to leave the house, I was usually taking the meetings, and then I would just be kind of juggling from one meeting. I'd like finish a meeting, I'd go check on her. So she'd always be within an earshot. So we built, we had like a little 2-bedroom, 2-bath house that we were living in countryside, and we built like a little office near the bedroom. And so she could get to the bathroom if she needed to, or if she needed help, like I could usually stop a meeting and I would just let her know, like, hey, if I'm on a client call, like I'd let her know before I jumped on a client call. And if it was a staff call, the staff just had to be flexible with me, like, and so like they might hear, her interrupt me and be like, hey, I need help with X, Y, or Z. And then we would take care of that. The one, so the symptoms that kind of became really stressful was that she became extremely bipolar. And so she became somebody that she wasn't. And she loved me all the way until the day she died. I kissed her goodbye the day that she passed, and she fought for Chloe and I. Like, she loved us dearly, and that gave me the strength to persevere, honestly. Like, if she had given up on fighting for us, like, it would have been really, really tough to carry it. But so she, like, the bipolar, though, made it really tough because she'd become somebody else. And I had no experience with, like, mental illness or mental health. And I didn't know if that was a natural thing that, like, medicine would help, or if the disease that she had was triggering it. And so the disease was a super complicated disease, and I won't get into all the nuances of that on the chat, but, like, the reality was for me is that, like, sometimes she'd be, like, yelling in the background. Sometimes she'd be, like, coughing. She'd have massive trouble breathing. Her vocal cords would close up, and she'd be struggling to, like, breathe. And I'd have to push pause on a client call. So there was a season where I was having to massage her muscles to get them to calm down while I'm on the phone with a client. And so I'm talking, and then I'm muting, and I'm massaging, and I'm talking, and I'm muting, and I'm massaging. And so when I think about, like, the gratitude side of it today is, like, you know, and even, like, the gratitude I have for my wife now of, like, anytime she can do anything for me, I'm like, this is amazing because I'm not juggling like that, you know? And the ability I have to even focus in and be at the office all day. I used to always have to have, you know, a mother-in-law or a mom or a nurse at the house if I was going to leave for the day. And not having to do that, and even having somebody who can go drive and pick Chloe up from school now, to me is, like, it's incredible. I'm just super grateful for that help. But yeah, so, like, a typical day, like, we just had to kind of figure that out. And when I had to go out of town, travel, or direct something off-site, there was just a lot of extra support and help that had to be brought in, and then a lot of phone call check-ins, texts, and things like that.
Great question, man. Thank you for explaining.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry you had to go through that, but it has made you the amazing leader you are today.
Thanks.
Yeah. Francisco.
Hey, so yeah, my name's Francisco Diaz, and Justin, you are the true definition of resilience. So question, if you could just, in Reader's Digest, like, what is your definition of success now? Like, with all you've been through, what would you define as success?
That's a great question, man. I love thinking through that. I know for me, like, what my success looks like is finishing my life with a line of people. I always think about that, like, funeral question. Like, what do you want your funeral to be like? And I would love a line of families, not necessarily the staff that worked with me, but their families, to be like, man, because of what Justin built, because of, like, how he helped even my dad's company, like, so even just how I serve, our agency serves organizations, because of what they brought to the table, my dad was able to be at my game. Because of what the health and the leadership that he gave to these creative people, like, I was able to, like, my parents were able to do X, Y, or Z. Like, those, to me, like, the families of the people that I get to work with, like, they are the recipients of the work being done in a way in which I believe will make our whole world better. And so I think that's the calling. If I bring results, like, those organizations grow. They bring in revenue. They succeed. Those people who have that calling get the fulfilling that they have fulfilled their vision. And so to me, there's, like, nothing greater than that. Like, if my staff can all succeed, can all become very, very wealthy because we solve very valuable problems, and that impacts their families for future generations, that to me is success.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. That 200-year vision is powerful. Paola was next. And then questions. One. All right. Cole. Jansen, you already went, but we'll give you a second one if no one else. Just kidding. I'm kidding. All right, go, Paula.
Hi, I'm Paula Rodriguez. I'm a health and life insurance broker. And if you could go back and do anything different, what would you do?
Oh, man. I don't know. I don't think I would do anything different. There's probably just days that I would not take for granted. So I think I would I've done a pretty good job of living in the moment, of being present. And I would just like be more appreciative for all of the moments that I've lived.
Thank you. I love that.
Cole, right?
Hey, Cole. So one thing that kind of resonated with me is you were saying, with creatives, whenever you're not doing well emotionally or mentally, the output suffers.
Yeah.
As a leader, I found the same thing. It's hard to show up sometimes when you're not your best mental self. And just hearing your story, what you've gone through. Two things kind of pop up. So one was when you were just talking about a day in the life, is how do you focus? How did you focus with that going on? And then the second is how did you mentally show up for your team and show up to grow your business in the midst of that, with the caveat that I understand there's something called grit, but how did you mentally do that?
Let's take that in two parts. Ask
Yeah.
the first question.
Yeah. So focus in the midst of what you were going through on a daily basis.
How'd you focus in the mix of
Yeah.
that chaos where most people would throw in the towel?
Yeah,
on
so
one or the other?
when I look at when I said that this certain life circumstance allowed me to build or forced me to build a structure that worked for other creatives, for the team. So when I look at that, how I focused is now how our team functions, and that is time blocking. So it's hey, we have to set our priorities. We have to know what our objectives are every single week, and we have to time block for that. So you have time set aside. And the other thing is continuing to push forward. And so for me, it was always Sundays. I knew where I wanted to go, but if I just did the things that I was supposed to be doing and never poured into myself to grow, then I'd be in big trouble. So if I'm always just working and never pouring in, I'd be in trouble. So Sundays for me, I was consuming every master class I could. I was in every mastermind. I was in every. I wish that CRES was around 10 years ago for me. I can't even imagine how much bigger the agency would be and how much further along we'd be if I had something like what Jeremy's built 10 years ago. And so for me, it was I was using the internet to just soak up as much as I possibly could or get access to anyone.
That's a really good answer. So application, right? First thing we talk big on here at CRES, time blocking. Time blocking, success. Controlling your energy and time and focus.
And I still do that today.
Me
my
too.
whole team can see in the next 2 weeks, they know 95% of my week or 80% of this week coming up is already blocked. And I can pretty much block 40 to 50% of every week for the next year.
Yeah.
And then we're filling those things.
And the second one that principally I talk on a lot is taking care of yourself as a leader, putting that oxygen mask on yourself, gaining the knowledge. When most people are watching TV, or doing different things, or sleeping, the leader who is taking on the industry is awake and executing for themselves first and taking care of themselves first. Sunday nights, early mornings, right? Reading and consuming information, and then practicing and executing. But yeah, so solid. I always try to simplify because I knew that I had a feeling that's what you were going to say, but it was so time blocking and intentional learning and consuming. What else would you add?
That's what helped me focus. That was I had objectives, so we had clear objectives that the team was focused on. I was measuring those weekly, and we were time blocking to make sure that the top priorities had time to do it. And then to sustain that, I was pouring into myself to grow.
Cool. And the second question, because there's two solid questions.
Yeah, and then the second one is just how did you break through in the midst of all the chaos in your life? How did you break through mentally to be there as a leader and as someone who could actually get the work done? Get past that mind block to get it done.
It's a good question. I think this idea of how did I break through is not that different than most people. I think when I looked at my situation, I actually believe that it was not that different than what most of you guys. Everybody has their thing. Their wife might not be struggling with a disease they don't understand, but you're struggling with a client you don't understand that just wrecked your work. That emotionally can throw you off just as much as a bad day at home. Your kid dealing with something at school, like that can throw you off just as much as my kid having Down syndrome and me not understanding like what's the right environment for that kid to go to school. And so I think the very degrees of chaos that we sometimes can tell ourselves is an excuse to like not perform is a trap. And so I think like I just chose not to believe the trap that my chaos was worse than anybody else's. And I just said, you know what? I've got a purpose and I have to figure out a way to survive. And so I'm going to just take one step towards that purpose every day and keep going as much as I possibly can and realize that like the excuse of everything else around it is just that. Like, so that chaos can't really be my excuse. And then I would also just say like, I could have done better. Like I can look back at it and go, man, I could have done even more. There's things I know I should have done. And I probably would have been further along had I done some of those things. So I can look back in this season now and go like, I don't have an excuse. I'm going to definitely have to be doing those things.
Thank you.
James, I know you had another question, but we'll get to it.
Thank you so much. So first of all, congratulations on going from 6-figure to 7-figure. That's huge.
Thanks.
And I resonated a lot when you said, you know, when you were in-house and you had a smaller office, you knew everything that was going in, everything that was going out. You can say your numbers quick, but as you started to grow, obviously those things change. How, as a person that's very much like I like to be involved and like to be controlled, how do you manage the growth aspect of it?
Yeah.
Even though you still want to be a part of it, you still want to know what's happening. How could you handle that 6-figure to 7-figure jump?
Oh, that's a good question because the reality is it depends on your vision. Some leaders, some visionary leaders especially, are not meant to ever stop being involved. And they should just hire somebody else to manage it. If you don't want to let go of it, that's not a bad thing. Not everybody was meant to lead a 7-figure business. And so I just think it's a super simple question that you have to ask yourself, and that is, do I care more about a bigger vision, or do I care more about this thing that I do with my hands? And if you are like, man, I just love the business that I built. I love doing things. If I wanted to still make websites, and if I still wanted to get on the call with every single client that we have and work through whatever problem they need to work through, then I would, and I wanted to grow my business, I could still own it, but I would have to hire a CEO who could manage 40 accounts or 50 accounts because I can't manage that. I would have to let and segment and say, hey, well, what is the work I love doing the most? And just focus in on that. I believe that for me, it's a daily decision to say, I believe that I'm the one who is best suited to be the CEO. I believe that I'm the one who has this vision. And I actually think there's people around me that are better at doing the thing than I am.
The integrators and implementers.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so I get stoked when I see somebody else who's got more talent than me and they can focus 100% on the thing that they are incredibly gifted at. And I can focus on leading that vision forward. So it's like it's a decision every day, but I think every leader finds himself, even as you grow from 7 figures to 8 figures, or even like, the jump of even going from like a few million to 10 million or 8 or 9 million is a very different business altogether. And I think you have to ask that question. And if it's not, I'm still the guy. You've got to figure out how to lead, hire, develop that, build the right board of directors around you and go from there.
Yeah. And the other thing too is just realizing that, things evolve, right? So this is a 2-part answer from both of us, but things evolve. And if you do finally hit that crossroads where you say, I do have the desire to scale and I'm not content being where I am. Solid point. Like a lot of people have this desire to scale, but the reality is they're doing it from the wrong image approach. And the wrong, they're trying to find their identity in this thing, and they'll actually never achieve it because there's always a bigger company. There's always a bigger opportunity. There's always just a little bit more money, a little bit more success. And so the most important thing to remember as a leader is that no one will do it exactly how you will do it. Your job is to get them to embody the vision and make it their own. And you have to be okay humbly allowing them to make the decisions and fail. And I would say, who is the most valuable employee in a company, up to hundreds of thousands of employees? And the answer is quite simple. It's whoever is speaking to the customer first and last. Because at that point in time, it's that individual that now has the magical, beautiful information that can allow me as a leader to cognitively create the strategy and vision to serve that person. A lot of times there's this great disconnect in companies when you're trying to let go, is that you have to let and use your resources and give them the freedom to learn about your customer and do customer-facing activity, and that they're giving you the data all the way up. Because that's why these big companies sometimes they like Sears, right, and Toys R Us, and these, Disney even, right? They stopped listening to their consumer and their consumer's desire, and they didn't empower the people who were the smallest in the organization, actually had the most power with information. And so it's always realizing that it's who, not how. It's not how do I do something. It's the proper who. And I'll probably do a chat just on this, or like a course or talk, but it's this thing called the 3 E's that I developed. And it's a cognitive process and a filtration system to identify what tasks should I do. And it's quite simple. Does this task give me energy? Am I effective at it? Mm-hmm. And is it an efficient use of my time for my role and scope of work? If you can't strike all 3, it's a task not for you, and you have to find a who for it.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I love it. I'm very good at it, but dang it, I'm no longer efficient at it.
Yes.
Delegate, and delegate slowly, and then quickly with accuracy to the right who. And get the right person in the seat, like Jim Collins says, and the wrong people entirely off the bus. I hope that helps. I mean, it's like, but you can never control it. And I would really dive deeper to, like, what is the reasoning behind the control? Because that would actually be the thing that you focus on, because you cannot control complexity. But you can set up rules and principles that help guide the complex movement of your business and life.
That's good.
What do you think?
Yeah, I like the word, does the work make you feel strong? Like you said, does it give you energy?
Energy, effective, efficient.
Yeah. And you can kind of go like, when I'm done with that, do I feel weak or do I feel strong?
You did it drain me out.
Yeah.
And there's some things you just have to do. Those are called buffers, right? Dan Sullivan created the free focus on buffer day. Yeah. Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
It's so good. Todd Hawkins taught that to me.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so there's certain things as a leader you just have to do. That's where I did it yesterday. What did I have to do yesterday? We opened up a new bank account. It's a real life example. And I absolutely hate the mundane of the financial stuff. And I go, oh man, all right, well, I don't have, my PPC, you guys got to learn this one too. People, processes, and capital is like, I don't got the capital to hire the right person and develop the right process to do this. And so I have to now take all of my automatic systematized bills and transfer them to this new bank account. And I was like procrastinating. So I'm just going to block 90 minutes and grind and there's certain things like that you just got to do. Because I was the person and I was the process and I was the capital, so I struck all 3. So even though I don't like doing this thing, I just gotta suck it up and do it. But I'm gonna do it very quickly, very effectively, because it's not giving me energy right now. But that's the other thing. I'm gonna take note of that, because guess what? The first thing I'm gonna do when I have the right cash and processes to handle that, I'm hiring that sucker out. I will never do that again once I get to a certain point. Of capital, right? And you just go, even when you're small, you're taking notes of these things that are just zapping your energy. And you were effective, but you weren't efficient because you're like, oh my gosh, I don't like this. And you were like, anybody just walking by your door, like, hey, you want to talk about anything? Like, you don't want to do it. Yeah. And I don't know. That's an example. I like give tangible examples.
Conversation with you is like a
ADD moment.
Just getting slammed by 30 leadership books at once.
That's why everyone's like, when are you writing a book? I don't know how many times I don't know. We'll figure it out. I use AI now as like a ghostwriter, so it's helping me.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I will probably release a book. All right, okay, one or two more. Oh, yeah, one more.
All right. Thank you for your time anyways and sharing with us. So you talked a little bit about team culture and vision. So if you can kind of walk me through at the early age of your company, what was that team culture? What was that vision? Was it, were they like related together? And now that the company, I'm guessing, is a bit bigger, has that team culture kind of been the same? And what's the vision now? How do you project that vision to the team?
Yeah. Ultimately, early on, the culture was, what do I like? The culture was like, what did I want to build around myself, and what worked in the scenario that I had. So I was working from home. I had a remote team they were in Tampa for the most part. I even tried, outsourcing overseas. That didn't work for me. And so we said, well, we have this like weird thing where it becomes kind of hybrid. Then we got a small office. So that changed our culture a little bit more. And so we just did things like, I like to have fun. So if we go through a work week and there's nothing fun at all in there, that's a bad week for me. And so we're going to have fun. Our staff meetings, we do every week now. I would say probably 6 out of 10 of our staff meetings, we do not talk about work. Culture is typically not the work you're doing. It is the environment you're setting to do the work. And so we'll typically just engage with the team. It's a time in which the whole full-time staff is together, even though it's on half the team's typically in the office and the rest of us are on like a Zoom call. We're all on a Zoom call, even if we all have our computers next to each other. And so like we have fun. And about 6 of those, we'll do goofy things. We did this thing last week called the Business Walrus, where everybody gets like 3 cards. You break up into teams, and you have to come up with a pitch in 10 minutes with your team, and then you have to pitch it to the Business Walrus to an investor. He's an investor. I didn't know this. I gave this to somebody who's much better at leading our meetings than me, and he had like even sent like a walrus mask to the guy who's supposed to be the investor. And it was super goofy. If anybody had like looked in on our staff meeting, they'd be like, what's going on there? But man, we had super high engagement. The team had a lot of fun. It's a great way of putting, people who don't normally work together on projects together in just a short little 10-minute thing. We had a shared experience for an hour. And so that's stuff that's like still happening today. When we do our staff retreats, culturally, like that's our intensive time. We've tried every year to figure out the right balance of like how much retreat time do we need as really, really effective, high-level performers that are on staff. Like they need the week to be valuable. If we do a retreat time, like it's got to be worth it. And so they're taking time away from their families. They're taking time away from their normal routines to go do this trip. It will be the best food. It'll be the best experiences we can afford. It'll be the best environments. So we'll get great hospitality experiences and great hospitality environments as well. And we'll try to always do something that creatively inspires. So we'll do that mixed with like some training and some fun. And that ultimately has been like every quarter we've got to do something like that. Sometimes that's a 1-day thing, and sometimes it's a 3-day trip that we all are flying in for. And then the rest of the month or the quarter is just figuring out how to kind of keep that thing flowing. And that just really kind of came from like, hey, this is what I would want as a creative. These are things that I demand. And so, they're in me. And so, yeah, maybe other leaders would do it differently, and that would be totally cool too. But there's still like part of those things that I go, hey, this inspires me. And so I think that's a good shot. And then we just start letting other leaders say, well, this would inspire me. And so this is what this could or would look like. Sometimes it's not the thing that I would choose, but the team has responded really well to those things too. So as we've grown, it's really just been like, hey, well, we got other really smart people. We have other people with great ideas, and we'll start letting them speak into that culture too. As far as the principles and the values, we've had to rein certain things in, but one thing that I've kind of kept true to, which is a great leader had said this a long time ago, and I haven't yet to like disprove this, and that was do for one what you wish you could do for everyone, and stop being like, if I can't do it for everybody, I can't do it for one. So if Jeremy needs to take 3 months off, and I need to not replace him, I'm going to let him do that if I can make that work. And I'm not going to think, well, I can't do that. That can't be a policy. What if everybody else wants to take 3 months off? The whole thing would fall apart. And I just have to kind of take it like individual cases. And you would think like as you get bigger that you can't do that, but your leaders can do that. And as you grow and as you develop leaders, they can treat people that way too. especially when everybody is focused on the end results. Because then Jeremy's now not just saying, I want to take this time off. He's going, I know what results I need to still get done. Here's how they can still get done while I go to do this thing for 3 months.
Yeah, great question. Great question. Great answer.
Thanks.
Great answer. Well, guys, we're out of time. That was a phenomenal chat. Justin, where can people find you, find about your company, your business, hear your story more?
Yeah. We're most active on Instagram.
Okay.
Verse Creative.
Verse. Now, it's not, now spell that.
VERS.
VERS. Very creative way to spell verse.
It's Dutch for fresh.
Ah, that's fresh, bro.
It's fresh.
So verse, VERS, creative. What's the website?
Versecreative.com.
Verse, VERS, creative.com.
Yeah.
And you specialize, you support a lot of very large nonprofits in marketing. Right. What other companies do you support for marketing?
Yeah, we also work with some large manufacturers, and we also specialize in working with professional services. So lawyers, architects, designers, that kind of professional services. They typically have a consultation sales model. It's not a product that is just like off the shelf kind of a product. So
who do you need to connect with the most right now, would you assume? Like from like an employee standpoint, talent perspective, someone to help you with operations, or also consumers? Who are you looking for right now?
I think we're just looking for leaders who want to grow their organizations right now. I think we're looking for those like CEOs to network and grow and challenge, and that can grow us, challenge us.
Awesome. Check them out. Justin, thanks for coming, dude.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. This is great.
Again, that concludes our CRES Chat. This was on learning how to pivot, persevere, or destroy a vision or an idea, or when that destruction and things are coming down at you. Tune in next month. We have a pretty good one. It's on effective leadership and how to buy and scale companies. I do have a really cool guest, but he has confirmed, but I want to just triple check it, so I won't say who it is yet. But it's a pretty big powerhouse guy if I can get him here. So nowhere close to you, though. So, again, thanks. My name's Jeremy. It's awesome. Let's hang out.
Thanks a lot.